Welcome to Declassified Deep Dive, where unredacted files reveal hidden truths. Let's uncover the secrets. I'm your host, Raj, and each week we explore a new secret deep dive.
All right, we are about to dive into one of the wildest, most disturbing chapters in American history. Seriously, it's a story full of spies, secret labs, and this hidden war for the ultimate prize, total control over the human mind.
Okay, that sounds like the beginning of a really strange joke, right? You've got some of the most notorious criminals in U.S. history, and then a brothel run by the CIA? The connection seems absolutely impossible, but I promise you, it is terrifyingly real.
The one thing that connects them all is a single code name, MKUltra. And look, I know this sounds like something ripped straight from a conspiracy theory website, but Project MKUltra was a very real, documented, and officially approved program run by the Central Intelligence Agency. And its reach was, well, it was shocking. Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, was actually a subject in a Harvard psychological study that was part of this program. The connections are just chilling.
So, you have to ask yourself, how did the CIA, an American intelligence agency, get to the point where it was running mind control experiments? Well, the whole story really kicks off with the intense paranoia and fear that was just gripping the entire world during the Cold War. So picture this. The Korean War is ending, and American prisoners of war are starting to come home. But they're different. They seem brainwashed. Some are even publicly praising communism. For officials back in the US, this was an absolute nightmare. It looked like the Soviets had cracked mind control, and America felt like it was dangerously behind the curve.
And when you look at the timeline here, it's pretty staggering. The CIA itself was brand new, right? Formed in 1947. Just a few years later, with the Korean War fueling all this panic, the director of the CIA, Allen Dulles, gives the green light to Project MKUltra. The agency went from its very creation to running secret mind control experiments on its own people in less than 10 years.
This quote right here, from the CIA's own chief of the medical staff, it tells you everything you need to know about their mindset. It's this wild mix of genuine fear and a pretty chilling justification for what they're about to do. They truly believed they had to master these techniques before their enemies did. Of course, the great irony is that they became the exact unscrupulous hands they claimed to be so afraid of.
So what was Project MKUltra exactly? Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was this massive, sprawling umbrella program for all kinds of research into behavioral modification. And its scope? Honestly, it was almost unbelievable.
149. Just let that number sink in for a second. That's how many different sub-projects were running under the MKUltra umbrella. This research was funded through dozens of universities, hospitals, even prisons, and a lot of them had no clue that their secret benefactor was the CIA.
And just look at some of their official research goals, taken directly from congressional documents. Things like promoting illogical thinking, producing amnesia. They even studied aspects of magician's art to learn how to drug people without them noticing. I mean, come on. This was a program designed from the ground up to weaponize the human mind itself.
But out of all those 149 sub-projects, there's one that has become absolutely infamous for just how bizarre and reckless it was. Operation Midnight Climax.
Yeah, you read that right. The CIA set up and funded brothels, actual brothels in New York and San Francisco to use as real-world laboratories. The mission was simple. Lure unsuspecting men into these safe houses and then see what happened when they were secretly dosed with LSD. And the guy they put in charge of this whole thing was George White. Now, he wasn't your typical buttoned-up CIA agent. He was a tough, seasoned narcotics agent who knew the criminal underworld inside and out. He was known for bending the rules, for getting his hands dirty, which I guess made him the perfect, if morally bankrupt, choice to run the agency's secret brothels.
The whole process was just chillingly systematic. Prostitutes, who were on the CIA payroll, would pick men up at bars and bring them back to the safe house. Then their drinks would be spiked with LSD, and all the while, from behind a two-way mirror, CIA agents would just sit there watching, listening, and taking detailed notes as the drug completely took over. These men were human guinea pigs, plain and simple.
And this quote, wow, it just paints this incredibly surreal and, frankly, depraved picture of what was going on. The official goal, supposedly, was to see if a man, high on LSD and in a, let's say, compromising position, could be tricked into spilling secrets. You know, it's so easy to get lost in all the spy thriller details of this stuff, but we really can't forget what was actually happening here. Real people were being drugged, manipulated, and experimented on without their consent. The human cost of MKUltra was just devastating, and in some cases, it was deadly. Probably the most famous victim was one of the CIA's own, a man named Dr. Frank Olson, an Army scientist who worked on biological warfare. At a CIA retreat, someone spiked his glass of Cointreau with LSD. He had no idea. A week later, after suffering what the CIA called a severe psychotic episode, he fell to his death from a hotel window. For decades, the official story was suicide. His family never, ever believed it.
And the horror wasn't just confined to LSD parties. Up in Montreal, Canada, a CIA-funded psychiatrist named Dr. Ewan Cameron took things to a whole other terrifying level. He used his own patients, people who came to him for help with things like anxiety or postpartum depression, and turned them into subjects for these brutal experiments involving drug-induced comas, massive amounts of electroshock therapy, and looped audio messages played over and over for days on end.
His goal was something he called de-patterning. He was literally trying to erase a person's mind and rebuild it from scratch. As you can hear from this victim's quote, the result was just completely destroyed lives. People were left as empty shells, their memories and their personalities totally shattered. For decades, all of it, remained a tightly guarded secret. So how did the truth finally come out? Well, it was a mix of some really persistent journalism and a congressional investigation that just refused to give up. So in 1973, right before he retired, the CIA director Richard Helms ordered every single file related to MKUltra to be destroyed. It was a clear, blatant attempt to erase this entire chapter of history. But they missed some. 2 years later, a congressional investigation called the Church Committee stumbled on a bunch of financial records that had been misfiled somewhere. The receipts, the payment stubs, it was the proof they needed. The program was real, and the dam broke. So what did they get for all this? After decades of unethical experiments, destroyed lives, and all the lies, what was the final result? Well, the official conclusion from Congress was that the program produced few useful results. All of that immense human suffering was for almost nothing. It wasn't just a moral catastrophe, it was a practical failure too. Which, of course, brings us to the final haunting question. We only know what we know because a handful of financial documents survived by complete accident. But the vast majority of the files, all the operational details, the names of victims, the results from countless other experiments, they were all turned to ash. So you have to wonder, what other dark secrets, what other operations were lost forever in that fire? That's the truly terrifying part. We may never know.